It is said that life has a habit of bringing about the most unlikely surprises. They can happen anytime and in any age. Often these surprises come by way of the most unlikely people. I have witnessed this throughout my life when I am completely taken back by someone who does or says something totally unexpected, especially when they seem to be the least expected person to do so. It catches you by surprise. Perhaps that is why, for many years, one of the only TV programs I watched was America's Got Talent. You never knew who that unsuspecting, outstanding talent would be. And often it turned out to be the least likely of persons. Now, I'll never forget a performance 11 years ago. It is still as vivid in my mind as if it were yesterday. As I recall, there was no one that really stood out during the show that night. That was until a small 10-year-old girl appeared on stage. And I said to myself, oh no, not another one of these kind of performances. To my thinking, she was the most unlikely contestant. But immediately when she started singing, I said to myself, wait a minute, this cannot be. She sang an opera aria with astonishing classical perfection. No one could believe what they heard coming from this tiny young girl. Of course, the surprising, unexpected performer was Jackie Evancho, who became an instant star, selling to sellout audiences across the country and producing award-winning CDs. This was a definite, unexpected, and surprising moment. When thinking about such surprises, my thoughts also now immediately turn to many centuries back, to the 15th century. When a mere adolescent at the age of 16 was able to lead a nearly defeated people to victory in what was called the 100 Years' War. It was one of those surprising events, since the adolescent was a peasant farm girl who acted upon a vision which happened 4 years earlier. We are all familiar, or at least partially aware of the story of Joan of Arc, who led the French army out of despair and defeat to victory after victory against the territorial grabbing English throne. Her accomplishment ended when she was captured at age 19 and burned at the stake for a trumped-up charge of heresy. Joan of Arc has to be one of the greatest unlikely surprises in history. For the Christian, one of the ultimate unexpected surprises is that God chose an unsuspecting young virgin to bear his son. Mary was chosen to be God's instrument of the incarnation. She was no more than an ordinary young woman who happened to be engaged to an older man, a carpenter named Joseph. The unexpected surprise announcement to her and Joseph concerning her pregnancy had to not only be surreal, but potentially life-threatening. But through faith, both she and Joseph found God's will in the surprising announcement. That announcement in and of itself was an unsuspected surprise. But there was yet another one of those life surprises, which we may not have thought about. Mary, visiting Elizabeth, who was about to bear John the Baptist. Now, I believe it is generally thought that Mary was an innocent, passive, and even gentle young woman, unattached from worldly involvement. I guess we could say that most think her to be innocent of worldly concerns. This all may be true, and that is why she had to say upon visiting Elizabeth, what she had to say comes as an unexpected surprise. Her words became one of the first hymns that the early church sung, the Magnificat. These words of Mary were no ballad of love, peace, and humility and harmony you would expect from a young woman, although it begins as a loving ballad. She begins with these beautiful words of humbleness. My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices to God, my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowly of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. These are the words which you would expect from this young woman who was to bear the Son of God. They were the words of great thanksgiving and humility for being chosen by God. They were words founded in a deep faith and acknowledgement of the heavy responsibility placed upon her young life. They were words which would confirm her place in history. All of this was to be expected in what appeared to be a very lovely ballad. But there is more. For the beginning of what would be called Mary's hymn or song would sharply change to the most revolutionary of prophecies. It was unexpected surprise which would foretell a radical message and the outcome of the incarnation. The prophecy of Mary would tell of how God would turn the world upside down, which would come true through his power. She said, he has shown strength with his arm. God would see to it that mankind would know that his kingdom would not be that which is governed by worldly interest and power. It would be his will revealed through the power of the incarnation. This revolution would first speak to those who find undue pride in themselves. She's saying, he has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. Now, in comparison to Jesus, all of our pride fades away. This comparison enables us to see who we really are. How can excessive self-pride stand up against the message and life of Christ? Can we ever measure up to the love and forgiveness which he came to share with us? Self-pride is relinquished when we live in God's grace, since love takes over. When this happens, there is no longer the need for pride. Love is the ultimate fulfillment in life, while pride is empty attempts in finding self-worth and meaning. Mary foretells that Jesus would present this radical but better way of life. Not only would the proud be affected, but the powerful also. This was a social revolution, which was time and again emphasized through Jesus' ministry. Those with prestige, influence, social status, and power no longer could exist as a result of this revolution. In fact, those in such positions would be made low and the lowliest of society lifted up. This is because in God's kingdom of love, there cannot be inequality. There cannot be anyone lower or higher than anyone else. By the very definition of love, there cannot be such distinctions. Everyone is on common ground. No one is lesser or no one is greater in God's kingdom. That is not the way in which mankind normally operates, and is not the way we formulate society. This prophecy of Mary was revolutionary, to say the least. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly, she said. Wasn't this inherent in Jesus' message? Think about it. Finally, Mary's prophecy of a social moral revolution would actually affect the pocketbooks of everybody and have its economic ramifications. The poor would be brought out of their state of poverty, a state of constant hunger and need. When there are those who have an abundance of riches, the haves in life, how can there continue to be the have-nots who struggle to meet even the barest essentials in life? This made even worse when the haves maintain their riches at the expense of the have-nots. The revolution would be that the poor would be lifted up and the rich denied the continuance of their economic enhancement in God's kingdom. Mary's prophecy cut like a two-edged sword into the greed of mankind, for she said, he has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. This prophecy of Mary is as alarming today as it was 2,000 years ago. Label this as you wish, but it is clearly a Christian revolution called for by Mary's prophecy. Jesus, in fulfilling this prophecy, is as much a revolutionary today as he was 2,000 years ago. The message of this prophecy is as important to us today as when it was spoken. God has no room for excessive self-pride, no desire for dominance and oppression, and no time for greed and inequality. When we place our lives alongside of Jesus' life, we may just be suddenly and unexpectedly surprised to find the truth of who we are and where we stand in the light of Mary's prophecy. Every one of us desires to be within God's grace, and you know what? We are. But to find the fulfillment of this grace, we must be motivated and live the life of his love. Likewise, to be a part of the revolution of Mary's prophecy is to seek to have this love conquer our lives and have no regrets about it. This is the joy of God's love. This is Mary's prophecy in her hymn, the Magnificat. Amen.